Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru,
Vaheguru Sahib Jiyo. तुम हो सब राजन के राजा, आपे आप गरीब निवाजा, दास जान कर कृपा करो मोहे, हार परा मैं आन द्वार तोहे। सगल द्वार को छाड़ के गहो तुहारो द्वार, बाहें गहे की लाज अस, गोबिंद दास तुहार, गोबिंद दास तुहार। सासंग रब की फतेह जी। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। Great turnout, well done. We're all nearly here. So just keep going. So this week we're going through we've got 3 sessions left of the course, I think. Just got to check in a minute. But effectively we've got 3 parts of history left to cover, yeah, and then the Anandakara. So it's 4 sessions. And last week we covered Kirtan. So this week we're covering just a quick recap for those that who was here last week for the Kirtan one. Okay, all right. So most of you will be happy with the idea of what is Rag and what is Tal now. What's Tal? The beat, yeah. So different kinds of beats, and then the Rag is obviously the kind of flavor of the music. We then looked at things like how is Guru Granth Sahib Ji structured by Rag. What is a Rag? What are the Sikh Rags? Because there are other Rags, but they're not devotional Rags. There might be other Rags for maybe for passion. We don't need those of that type, yeah. So there's some things that were left out, some things that were included, because obviously the focus of Sikhi is to connect to the one, yeah. Styles of Kirtan, we looked at instruments, great Kirtanis, how even knowledge is passed on, and how can we actually halt the decline and actually bring about a resurgence, yeah. So there's a continual decline. We haven't got into resurgences yet. Yeah, people think, oh, there's more going on, but overall there's still a decline going on. And this week then we're covering from 1801 all the way up to 1925. So our clicker's not working, so apologies for that. So the part A of this will be basically from 1801, when Ranjit Singh starts to set up Sikh Raj, all the way up to his death and the decline. So what you've got is in 1873 Sultan-e-Qaum, Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, not the himself, sorry, go back. He's basically, just keep going back a bit more. Back. Yeah. So he's he's one of the leaders of the Panth, chosen by the Panth as the Sultan. Yeah. So he's a great inspirational Sikh, and he's at the point where he's obviously old. He passed away. Unfortunately, with his passing away, what you then get is that the Misls start fighting amongst themselves. Yeah. And within this fighting amongst the different people, because now there's peace in Punjab. Yeah. The Ahmad Shah Abdali has stopped attacking. Yeah. He's staying up in Afghanistan. The Mughal kingdom is in decline in Delhi. Yeah. So what you've got is like a power vacuum. Yeah. And in that power vacuum, the Sikhs now have kind of taken over Punjab. The problem though is that the Sikhs are divided into different Misls. Yeah. And as the Sultan of the Qaum passes away, then these Misls become more and more divided. There's a bit of a land grab going on, a bit of a power grab going on, and unfortunately within that then you end up getting egos clashing against each other. And the Panth thing is kind of forgotten about while they're trying to make themselves powerful and rich. And so all the Sikh kingdoms kind of flow from this point onwards, yeah, what happened in that time and during Ranjit Singh's time. Ranjit Singh is very young. He's born in 1780. He's only a baby when Jassa Singh Ahluwalia passes away. But we'll talk about his background. But effectively by 1799 he's taken over Lahore. Yeah, and then what you get then is from 1801, not only is he taken over Lahore, but then he consolidates his Raj and becomes the king of Punjab, or what he calls himself is it's called the Sarkar-e Khalsa. Yeah. Within that period from 1801 to 1839, 38 years, Ranjit Singh passed away. What happens after that is you get the 10 years of infighting from 1839 to 1849. These 10 years are kind of like where the destruction of the Raj actually happens, yeah, of the Sikh Raj, not the British Raj. And then from 1849 then, the British take over Punjab, and now you've got the British Raj. And part B will then cover what happens with the Sikhs. Well, somebody complained about this idea, Sikhs under the British, but that is what it was, yeah. The Sikh Raj was gone, and we were being controlled by the British people. This 75-year period, okay, from 1849, we stop at 1925 because this is the. Oh, okay, I forgot to put that in. 1925 is when the Gurdwara Reform Act is done, and the Sikhs now get control of our Gurdwara back. Okay, SGPC is created by that time, and now it controls the Gurdwara. So basically, our institutions are free from British control. Yeah. So that's what we're going to cover today, from 1849 in part B up to 1925. So the Raj of Ranjit Singh, the rise of him. What's his background? He's the great grandson of Bhai Budh Singh. Bhai Budh Singh is one of the Panj Pyare alongside Baba Deep Singh, yeah, who is actually giving the Nawabi to Sardar Nawab Kapoor Singh. But Nawab Kapoor, the most, you know, time Bhai Mani Singh this is, yeah. And this is right back in the history now. Bhai Mani Singh, at that time, the Mughals came up to the Sikhs and they said, look, we've tired of fighting you. How about you give us one person as a leader, and you come under our system, and you have your own freedom. And at that time, then the Panth chose Nawab Kapoor Singh. Nawab Kapoor Singh didn't want to be a Nawab until the Panth gives it to him. So the Panj Pyare of the Panth, at that time, Baba Deep Singh was one of them, and so was Bhai Budh Singh, who, his son, Bhai Nod Singh, ended up becoming the head of Sukracharya Misl, one of the Misls that was around for all that time. And then his son is Maha Singh, again the head, and then his son is Ranjit Singh. So you can see that his whole family has been involved very closely with the Sikh Panth, yeah. And he's been a sort of bred to be a leader, yeah. His dad was leader, his grandfather was, the great grandfather was leader, so he's bred to be a leader. He's blind in one eye, so they often, one of the sort of the way that the people derogatory refer to him is Kana, yeah, because he was one-eyed. He used to say, look, God gave me one eye so I could look upon all of humanity in the same way. Because you see later on, he didn't discriminate at all. What he did is, as part of his Misl, growing up, he took over responsibility quite early, okay, and he fought off the Afghan invasion, and he's part of the battles in 1796, 1797 and 1798 by Shah Zaman. Won a lot of respect for that, for his kind of military prowess. So although he was blind in one eye, he wasn't this feeble kind of person. He was actually militarily very astute. You know, from very young age, he would have been involved in battle. Great horse rider as well. And then what you get is in 1799, he decides, right, you know, these other Misls are never going to get things done. I'm going to walk in, and he basically took over Lahore. And then in those 2 years, he did, and before that as well, he did a lot of kind of political maneuvering. So marrying daughters of other Misl leaders, yeah, so he's got a relationship with them, or annexing them. And within this time, he basically consolidated his position as the leader of all the Misls, and then in 1801 gets crowned Maharaja of the Sikh Raj of Punjab, yeah. And he calls it Sarkar-e Khalsa. He didn't say Ranjit Singh's Raj. He calls it the Khalsa Raj, yeah. Another big leader at that time was Fateh Singh Ahluwalia. In 1802, Ranjit Singh and Fateh Singh swapped turbans. It's a symbolic thing among Sikhs, yeah. To give your turban to somebody, it's a sign of respect, a sign of, you know, like Saropa is, yeah. And again, this was about him consolidating his status as the Raja, yeah. Because it's not happened before. There's not been one undisputed leader who is, you know, like this, unless he's somebody from a Sikh point of view. Like Ranjit Singh was not really like, he was a Sikh, but he wasn't really what you might say like a religious leader. Yeah, he was a cultural leader, right? So, but consolidating that position, he managed to do that. And by 1802, actually, same time as this is happening, is consolidating his rule, the Khalsa is also showing itself for what it is. Yeah, because basically Ranjit Singh in 1802, very interesting incident, in his kind of being crowned the king. Yeah, the exuberance of him being the Raja, he's got kind of like a number of wives, but also he decides that he falls in love with this Muslim dancing lady, yeah, Mora, and he decides, well, he's going to marry her as well. Okay. Now the Sikh strict Khalsa rehat is that a Singh can never marry a Muslim lady. Yeah. So it's very written up in all the Ratman. There's quite plenty of Ratnam about this. That a Sikh should never marry a Muslim. Now, whatever view it was, at that time the Sikhs were venturing into areas full of Muslims, okay, and they were rescuing people as well. So in order for the Sikhs to remain sort of strict in their sort of like relationship with the Muslims, not to start marrying their girls, converting them in. You can take many views. My view is that Maharaja didn't want to have this kind of animosity, because many people get very hot-headed when they feel that their women are being targeted. Yeah, you can see that in our panth as well. And so the Sikhs would never do that because it was against their dharam to ever marry a Muslim. Yeah, so basically he married Mora, and Akali Phula Singh was Jathar of the Akal Takht at the time. He was very offended by this. Okay, it was against the Maryada. So they called him to answer at the Akal Takht. And Ranjit Singh, saying, well, I'm the Raja, says, I refuse to go. Why should I go? I've done nothing wrong. Yeah, many of us nowadays might have a similar kind of attitude when we get called up. Yeah, well, I've done nothing wrong. So he refused to go. So Akal Takht says, no one is to speak to him. Edhe muh nahi lagna. Now he is the king of Punjab, yeah, and all the Khalsa have been giving an order. No one is to talk to Ranjit Singh. Yeah, so imagine it. And this is exactly what happens. In the morning he gets up, yeah, the guy who's his kind of manservant doesn't talk to him. When he goes outside to go for horse riding, first thing he should do is go horse riding. The stable boys don't talk to him. Yeah, the Khalsa at that time could give a hukum to the Sikhs, and the Sikhs would listen to that hukum. So Ranjit Singh goes, I can't rule this kingdom before the Sikhs don't talk to me. Yeah. So then he did appear at the Akal Takht, yeah, with his tail between his legs, and he accepted the punishment as well. Yeah. He was asked to accept 20 lashings, I think, with a whip, and he did take his shirt off and allowed himself to be tied to a post, ready for the lashing. But then Akali Phula Singh forgave him. Said, look, he's the king, but he's accepted the power of the Khalsa, but we're not going to whip him because that would be humiliating, because he's the king of the Punjab as well. So then they forgave him, but the Khalsa was still supreme. So to bear in mind that there was this kind of like a power struggle between what was the Sikh leadership and the political leadership, but also that the respect for the Khalsa amongst the Sikh populace was still very much there. Okay, the Akal Takht, if they gave a hukum, people still listened to it. Okay, so what happens next? Now, keep going. What happens though is that Ranjit Singh, he's not really in the interest of the sort of wider Khalsa. When we say Khalsa here, we're effectively talking about the Nihang Singhs. Yeah, most of the Khalsa at that time, the leadership was Nihang Singh leadership. Yeah, and he decided, Ranjit Singh, that this every 6 months we used to have a study about the Khalsa. Yeah, we talked about this before. That every Vaisakhi it would be in Anandpur Sahib, and in Anandpur Sahib. No, every Vaisakhi it would be in Anandpur Sahib. Yeah, and then every Diwali it would be in Harmandir Sahib. Every 6 months there will be a big Panthik meet. We would discuss what's our next 6-month plan, what we're going to do next. Yeah, and Ranjit Singh says to Khalifullah Singh, there's no need for this. Yeah, we've got the Raj already. What we have in these meetings for all the time, I'm already the king. We've got the Khalsa Raj. So these are kind of discontinued. And effectively now, many of us have never heard of a Panthik meeting like this. Yeah, it's sort of gone outside our consciousness. And even in the UK, I can't think of any regular Panthik meeting that happens where we actually have a plan. Very hard for us to pinpoint what is the 1 year plan for the Panth, what is a 5-year plan for the Panth. And that's because we stopped planning. We've stopped working as a team. Yeah. So you could say that from this point on, this decline in planning comes into our Panth. Yeah. The Sikh missiles at that time were pretty much all horsemen. Now in the Western world you would call this cavalry. Okay, having a horse was like the main thing. Everybody wanted a horse. Yeah, the Singhs had a lot of respect for their horses. They were called Jan Pai. They used to say, look, if your woman dies, you might not cry, but if your horse dies, you definitely would cry. Yeah, it's Jan Pai. So they had this kind of love for the horses. Yeah. Shastra, obviously, Shastra Vidya being the art of war, very much practiced by the Sikhs. Yeah, and if you joined, it wasn't regular training. So every missile would have its own kind of in-house leader. Yeah, and people that joined would get given training. Yeah. Now some missiles were better than other missiles at fighting in a certain different way, But they were all sort of trained themselves, but there was no regularized army training. It wasn't like you joined up the army, they did the training. It's like, for example, Sandhurst, it trains everybody for the whole army. Yeah, but you might go to different regiments and yet you're centrally trained. There was nothing like this now of Panth, at that time. It was all different missiles. Everybody provided their own horse and whatever weapons they had. So they were from a rich family, they had more shastras. They were from a poor family, they didn't have as much. But it's kind of like you joined the army and then you effectively lived off the commander, but you brought what you brought, you sort of benefited from what you brought to the party. So it's quite different. And it was all about personal loyalty to the leader, the head of the missiles. So that's why you get this kind of infighting as well, because it wasn't really about the wider Panth at that time when you were in your missile, it was about your leadership. And it was all guerrilla warfare. Why? Because for the last 100 years, effectively, the Sikhs have been fighting in a guerrilla warfare style tactic. Ever since the first Khalsa Raj in Sirhind was lost after Banda Singh Bahadur time, since then the Panth has been, refugees, and kind of Chakravarti all the time. So that's the Khalsa army. But Ranjit Singh, he wants to set up an even better army. He's very far-thinking, very kind of progressive leader, and what he wants to do is bring up to the standard of modern day world. And he's seen the British fight, very impressed by the way the British have fought and Western armies have fought, because it's all systematic training, discipline, and they've seen small groups of British soldiers beat off much larger forces, in numbers, because of their discipline. So he likes this, and what he wants to do is let's set up a well-drilled infantry, a well-drilled artillery, and also the third bit shouldn't be artillery, should be horses, cavalry. So what he does is he knows we already got a good cavalry, that's guys on horses, but what we need to do now is train infantry and artillery, and the expertise of this is not in the Sikh Panth at this moment, it's in the Western generals. So he said, let's get some people in to train our guys. Very far thinking. Keep going. Now, for those that don't know what infantry is, it's foot soldiers. Now, in those days, it was not, the Sikhs didn't see this as a glamorous job. Walking around with a gun in your hand wasn't seen as cool as being on a horse. So you had to sell it to the Sikhs as well. First thing he did is he employed former soldiers from the East Indian Army, not Western generals, but just soldiers to come in and train. And then he sent some people to study the British methods, and then finally he actually hired people as well. But one thing he did is he started say, look, the Sikhs don't like it too much being infantry soldiers, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire soldiers who are not Sikhs. So he started to hire Purbiyas, these are South people, Punjabi Muslims, the Afghans and Gurkhas. So now it becomes quite an eclectic army. But these troops did quite well, and he gave them a lot of respect. So they were tested in the campaign against Ahmad Khan Sial of Jarig, and also Zamindars of Uch, in 1803 and 1804. So these guys do quite well. He always came to the training sessions as well. So he gave it a lot of respect, and basically through a sort of quite a good PR campaign, you might say, he raised the status of being an infantry soldier. And what you then is, you get Sikhs start joining up as well. They want some of the action, because whenever you go and win a battle and you come back with big medals and stuff, people are like, yo, I want to join that regiment. They're getting action. It might be strange from our point of view here, as kind of civilians, to think that you actually want to go to battle. But if you're in the army, what you don't want to do is spend your time on barracks, on training exercises. What you actually want to do is go on tours and get experience in war. So from the point of view of a soldier, to have a unit which is always being deployed and getting loads of medals, then that's exciting. It's a place to join. The next thing is artillery. He increased the importance. Now we already had artillery. From the time of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Maharaj, Sikhs have had artillery. Guru Har Gobind Sahib Maharaj has actually invented a wooden cannon. It was seen as something that couldn't happen, but Maharaj made it. So, but nowadays, at that time, the guns weren't really as big. They could even be animal mounted. Now, an animal would not be able to carry a proper cannon. It would kill it. But those times they weren't so big. So he started to manufacture cannons that were of higher caliber, or larger caliber, and ammunition. So we're talking the bigger torps. And he hired one guy was this Ilahi Baksh and Lehna Singh Majitia, yeah, and then he actually hired General August Court, yeah, who in 1827. So he's now bringing in expertise, yeah, from outside, and also Alexander Gardner. So these people, some of their memoirs are available, which you can read, yeah, which is interesting to see how the court actually operated. And obviously they communicated with their family back home. They communicated. So we have a lot of insight into how Ranjit Singh's kingdom worked. Many books out there. Obviously I can't in this point go through quickly, but if you just typed in like the Maharaja of Ranjit Singh, there's many novels as well worth reading, okay. He also hires this guy who's a physician to, you know, how to mix gunpowder. So he's a scientist effectively, yeah. You know, like I was reading about the owner of the one who invented the Kalashnikov, yeah. He always regretted it, making it, and he was hiring people who were like scientists and how to be better and better at warfare. So again, very far thinking. So effectively what you've got is a very exciting new kingdom, foreigners coming in, okay. People who are decorated generals are leaving their careers abroad and coming over here. At that time, there was a recent lecture I went by Sukhpreet Singh Odoke, and he was giving a quote about how much the salary was. And the salary in Punjab for a Western general was about 20 times what they would have earned back for their own kingdom. So nowadays, people from India and Punjab are coming over here because the salaries here are much higher. But in those days, Punjab was so rich, okay, that people from abroad were running over to Punjab to earn money. Also, you've got to bear in mind that the Napoleonic wars were over. So a lot of experienced generals were now coming over thinking, what should I do next? And India, Punjab specifically, seemed like a mighty great adventure. Because if they're French, they don't want to work for the British. But here, they're working for the Sikhs, yeah? So it's something different for independent Raja. Okay, yeah, that's what I just said now. So the Napoleonic War was ended, and there was a lot of glory and riches in the army. So the cavalry was now being reorganized, artillery was being built up, and the infantry was being built up, yeah? And these are the generals that were brought in for the mounted soldiers or the cavalry. Jean-Baptiste Ventura, Jean-François Allard, they arrived in Lahore 1822. And he sort of checked up on them as well. You know, he was quite an astute person. He wasn't like somebody who would just say, yeah, he's come along and say, I'm the best general since sliced bread, and, you know, just get him on. He was quite careful about who he hired. And then he ended up making this special sort of SAS type soldiers, yeah, which was their forge cast. And he basically, again, made them train soldiers that were even better than the best soldiers that were available amongst the Sikh community, yeah, at that time. But still, the Nihang Singhs remained the most ferocious and the best warriors within his unit, yeah, because they lived that Chakravarti lifestyle all the time. The expansion of the kingdom now. So he's making this army, he's training them, investing a lot in the Sikh forge, in the training of it. At the same time, he's expanding the kingdom. Yeah, he's not like I'm going to chill with my kingdom, and you know, he's actually he's managed to capture the whole of Punjab, but he's not happy with that. He wants to grab it and make it even bigger. So what you get is then he pushed the Duranis. Duranis are those Abdalis, yeah, Ahmad Shah Abdali, he's also called Ahmad Shah Durrani. So he pushes them out of Punjab and actually invades Afghanistan. He's not content to kind of push them back to their homeland. I'm going to rule over you. So he pushes them back. And expands the boundary of the Sikh Empire all the way to Peshawar, which is in the top west, and then Jammu and Kashmir. So it should be Jammu, not Jammu. And the two key generals that do this for him, okay, is the first one is Hari Singh Nalwa, okay, who, you know, is basically responsible for the Afghanistan campaign. Now, Hari Singh Nalwa was, there's loads of stories about him, by the way. Very chardi kala banda, quite a big guy as well. But he was like the bogeyman for the Afghans, yeah. You want to scare your kids, innit? And the Afghans would tell their kids, Nallu's going to come and get you. Yeah? And it was like, you know, the scariest guy ever. And he was. Now, there's a story about him that once a lady, a Muslim lady, saw him and was so enamored by this guy that she said to him, you know, I want a son like you, so I want to marry you. Yeah? And he was in a conundrum now because she'd asked him, you know, she goes, you Sikhs never refuse anybody, so don't refuse me either. I want to have children by you so they can be as brave and strong as you. And also the Guru's hukam is you can't marry a Muslimani. So what does he do? He says, sit down. He sits in her lap. He says, I'll be your son. So you want a son like me? I'll be your son. Yeah? And so what can she do now? So he kind of gets out of it, but he still fulfills a Sikh mission of, fulfilling the demands of those people. So, very, very high moral character. Okay. In Zorawar Singh is a general, not so famous amongst the Sikhs at the moment, but a lot of work is being done by a Sikh historian, Dr. Udoke. Yeah, talking about him. He's making a movie. He came down last year. Recently he came to Southall and showed some clips, and they've gone and retraced the history. Now Zorawar Singh, he did the attack over Kashmir and Tibet. Yeah. Now the Tibetans, right? They respect the lion and the tiger. They've got this thing for the Singh. Yeah. And they see it as holy. So if they find a flesh or a piece of, a claw from a lion, they'll take it back to their house. He was such a warrior, yeah, Zorawar Singh, that when he died in battle. The Tibetans actually chopped him up into little pieces. They took a piece back to their house. Because they said, "This Singh here, this guy was as strong as a lion." Yeah. So that's the respect. You might say, "Well, it's quite gory," but really, the respect they had for Zorawar Singh was there in the fact that how they treated him in his death as well. Yeah. So a lot of our history needs to be discovered. But basically, they did some crazy missions out there at that time, and they were really, really, impressive. And Ranjit Singh was very happy with, obviously, the fact they expanded the kingdom. So now the Sikh kingdom is massive. Yeah, look at the size of that now. Punjab is probably about a fifth or maybe even a sixth of that right now, maybe even less than that, compared to what Punjab is now. Take Haryana away, take Himachal Pradesh away, take away Pakistan, Punjab, and what we've got now is so tiny compared to how big that kingdom was. Obviously, he's helped in these battles by the Khalsa. Yeah, as I'm talking about the Khalsa, I mean the Nihang Singh army, the Akali Phula Singh and the Akal Takht. They're still involved in this expansion. Yeah, and also we've got Diwan Mukham Chand, who is a Hindu general of the Khalsa army. Okay, so you've seen so far I've mentioned we had Muslim soldiers. So the Ranjit Singh's Raj, or the Sarkar-e-Khalsa, the majority of the population of the Sarkar-e-Khalsa is not actually Sikh. Yeah, Sikhs are only a very small population, because you've got all these Hindus, you've got all these Muslims. You've now got in the army Muslim regiments, Gurkha regiments, Hindu regiments. You've got generals who are Muslim, and Hindu. So it's a very eclectic army. And yet within this time, Punjab is very happy, very secular. He's a very secular ruler, and also Punjab goes through a very nice sort of period of growth. Yeah, of the arts, all kinds of things. One of the things, obviously, I say he didn't discriminate between the Sikhs and the others. Fakir Azizuddin is a foreign minister. I went to a lecture a couple of years ago by some of his descendants, yeah, and they were talking about how they remember the stories of their great grandfather talking about his time in the Sikh Raj, yeah. So the descendants of these people are still around. We've got a lot of records of this, Raj, yeah. He also, so Diwan Moti Ram is co-head of the mission to the British. So he sets up a mission to the British to establish relationships with the British at like what you might call at international level at that time, yeah, because that was a nation, and the British had a nation obviously abroad, but they had a nation in India as well, the British Raj, yeah. Just to tell you what's happening at that time is the British by now had kind of taken over the East India Company, roughly, yeah, and they'd nationalised it effectively. Pretty much, it was a trading company that became part of the British Kingdom, yeah, and with that they set up in the Sikh Raj. Okay, I don't know if it was at that time or it comes later, but the machinations were in place for them to set up a Sikh, a British Raj in India. Okay, so what he did is he negotiated a treaty with the British, where they drew lines. What was the Sikh kingdom? What was the British kingdom? Yeah, and a treaty not to invade each other, effectively, and respect each other's, territorial integrity. So very forward thinking. Yeah, at that time, he didn't let them come into. He sort of delayed them enough to make them think that there was no need for them to kind of, attack him and take over his kingdom. But obviously they wanted to. It's a very fertile region, lots of money, very rich area. Okay, just to note on this, yeah, what you'll see next, the Dogras, they were Kashmiri Hindu Brahmins. Okay, these people were the generals, Dhyan Singh and Gulab Singh. I know they've got the name Singh in there, but the Singh is not a exclusively Sikh surname, just in India. You see loads of Rajputs and so these two, and it's like a royal surname. These two were generals in the Sikh army. Yeah? So you see that he's not really, again, discriminating. However, was this as what the Khalsa would do? Yeah. Now you might say, well, no, the Khalsa would always be, independent. But Maharaj says in their hukum that the Sikhs should only trust power into the hands of the Khalsa, real power, yeah, because somebody else could turn on you. Exactly what happened to him later on, yeah. So they say that it's okay to share opportunities and everything else, but when it comes to actually political power, then the Khalsa Raj should only trust the Khalsa. Power should remain within the hands of the Khalsa. And unfortunately with Ranjit Singh, he went to the principle to the extreme where he said, no, everybody's equal and everybody's fine to expand, and then it actually worked against him to his detriment, okay? Because he maligned the Khalsa effectively. The Khalsa leadership of, when I say the Khalsa, I mean the kind of Akal Takht, Akali Phula Singh. He wasn't really, they didn't trust him too much, he didn't really trust them too much. He didn't give them too much power, okay? He was happy to give power away to Dogras and the other people, but not to the Khalsa itself, yeah? So he used them more as the soldiers, not political allies. Now this worked against him because you'll see later on what the Dogras did. They were the main betrayers of the Sikh Raj, okay? Also, just a point for those people that like their arts and stuff, yeah? Under Ranjit Singh, then the arts in Punjab really, flourish. Okay, a lot of the arts we see nowadays, Fulkari, all these beautiful styles, that all flourished under Ranjit Singh, calligraphy, yeah? And again, a very stable period of time, religion and arts were sponsored. There was no death penalty, by the way, in the Sikh Raj. Something to note, okay, when we talk about rules of how a government should govern. Sikhs never had a death penalty, okay? He also kept in check a lot of the fanatical imams, okay? So they were denied patronage, and the people that were more, kind of peace-loving, kind of our type of Muslims, you might say, sounds rude, but yeah, it's the fact. They were sponsored. Cow slaughter was banned, yeah, because he's you don't want to offend anybody either, okay? Make it kind of like a secular Raj. He put gold on the Harmandir Sahib and also built up Hazur Sahib, okay? Now Hazur Sahib, Maharaj Guru Gobind Singh Ji had said that no one should build a big monument here to me. Anybody who does so, their whole family will be ruined. So if you see what happens afterwards, Ranjit Singh's whole kind of parivar goes, but it's Maharaj said that don't make a monument to me, and yet he did so, yeah? So you can see, the bachans do come true. When Guru Sahib says something, it inevitably has to come true, yeah? He also, the gold on the Harmandir Sahib obviously came from him. So it wasn't gold. So now we call it the golden temple, but it should be called Harmandir Sahib because the golden part isn't what the Guru's put on it. It was white before, yeah? And later on, he also put gold on another famous Hindu mandir as well. The doors at Harmandir Sahib, the big wooden doors at Darshan Deori. As you go into Harmandir Sahib, they kind of go to that doorway. That was again something that he made. He had these beautiful doors, and the similar set were given to a Hindu mandir as well. Yeah, so he really wasn't like saying, okay, we've got to make sure that our Gurdwara are perfect. He was very secular in that way. Yeah, but like I said at the bottom, his relationship with the Nihangs and the Khalsa was not that great. They didn't recognize him as a Khalsa leader. They saw him as a political leader. Yeah, and they only really looked at the Akal Takht. But also, although he needed the Khalsa, okay, to fight all his battles, he also was a bit scared of them. When they would do the march past, when you have a general and you see a parade, yeah, you have all your troops march past. When the Nihangs would come past in their contingent, they would often swear at him. Yeah, so you can imagine that somebody's walking past and they got like that to see if he would jump or something, and they would take the mick out of him quite a bit. And he used to have a bodyguard, yeah, in front of him when the Nihangs walked past, just in case he decides to throw something at his head or something, just to make him realize who he was and who they were. They still saw themselves as the rulers of Punjab, and that he was just kind of, there for now, but they're the rightful owners. So now what happens in the fall? So you've got this kind of build up, great period of stability, but there's a lot of expansion, but not a lot of forward thinking and forward planning for the succession plan. Okay, one of the things the Sikhs again are very bad at, and you might say our community still, suffers from this. A lot of our Gurdwara aren't really making plans to build up the next generation of leadership to grow the Gurdwara forward. How do we train the next generation of, committee wale and pradhans and, treasurers and political leaders? We haven't really got a plan in place. But effectively what happens is that Akali Phula Singh passes away 1823 in fighting the Afghanis. 1837 Hari Singh Nalwa and Fateh Singh Aliwala pass away. So a lot of the main people that he kind of had his links with, okay, they sort of, you know, with age pass away. 1839 then he himself passes away. Okay, now some of the nicknames for him obviously were Sher-e-Punjab, Napoleon of the East, Lord of the Five Rivers. Yeah, but he's only 58 years old at this time. He's been ruling since he was about 19. Yeah, most of his life, you know, twice of his life he's been ruling. But again, he didn't have a set organization in place from his sons or whoever to be taking over, right? There's a bit of controversy around his death, so I'll put it in there just to let you know. Okay, a lot of his wives, okay, a number of his courtesans and servants as well, they all committed sati. So sati is when they jump on the funeral pyre, but they don't jump on it, but they sit on it, and they kind of burn to death alongside the husband. Okay, now that obviously sounds very horrible to us. The context is that Guru Amar Das Ji Maharaj had banned this. Okay, they had banned sati, and yet it was still carrying on. Guru Amar Das Ji Maharaj obviously is in the 1500s. Okay, so you can imagine, you know, this is 1700s, 200 years have passed, and yet this cultural practice remains. Where it stemmed from was the fact that people didn't want a widow, because widows weren't allowed to remarry. They didn't want a woman around, okay, because it might tempt other men. Okay, it could break up marriages, whatever it was. It wasn't ideal for them, so they just made up this thing going, how good it is, very loyal of the wife to burn with the husband. And they dressed it up, you know, and sold it to the women. And some of them actually bought into this. Yeah, they bought in. Obviously, these ladies didn't have to, but they bought into it. A lot of them didn't, but some of them did. Okay. A point on this: General Sham Singh Atariwala, another famous general, okay, who I'll mention him in a little while. His wife did the same thing as well. So it was a Punjabi thing. So still Punjabiyat hasn't come into the consciousness of the Sikhs. They're still behaving Punjabi, not necessarily behaving Sikh way. Yeah. In 1841, then General Zorawar Singh passes away. Yeah. So now, you know, you've seen the main leaders, the main generals are passing away. He passes away. So who's going to take over next? Who is the next kind of main person? Somebody who's got to be militarily strong, yeah, politically strong, used to planning forwards, and no one really is there. Now he has 7 sons by different wives. Okay. The Khadak Singh is the oldest. As soon as he passes, Khadak Singh is then called and is proclaimed as the emperor. The problem is Khadak Singh is a bit of a wastrel, yeah, not well respected, bit of a druggie as well, yeah, because a lot of opium floating around in Punjab, yeah. Obviously Afghanistan is around the corner, so there's not a lot of people that would back this guy to be the leader. And soon enough, his son, Maharaja Nonehal Singh, takes power and ends up putting down his father. Okay, and that's from effectively, I'm not sure whether he killed him or not, but 1839 to 1840, so for about a year, Nonehal Singh is in charge, but then I don't know what happens to him, I haven't researched it too much, but he's effectively deposed as well. So he comes out, and Maharani Chand Kaur comes in, and she becomes the empress for about 2 years, until Sher Singh, her son, takes over. Okay, and then he's only in power for roughly maybe 2 years, and then he's deposed, and then the Duleep Singh becomes the king, but he's not old enough to rule. He's a very young child, and his mother, which is Maharani Jind Kaur, then becomes the Dowager Empress. Can you go back one? Okay, she becomes, and he's effectively the Duleep Singh is effectively the ruler of Punjab from 43, 44 through to 49 for about 5 years. You can see how quickly things go through. This is not a stable handover, no transition. Yeah, power is going all over the place, court intrigue. Yeah, and all because Ranjit Singh should have really planned. Yeah. And all the gurus always planned, yeah, for the next. And this is the way that you are a far-thinking leader, yeah. You realize you're getting old, your friends are passing away, you have a will, and it's done properly. What happens with the Duleep Singh, yeah? And it's kind of like this period from 1849, I mentioned earlier, from 1839, Ranjit Singh's death, to 1849. These 10 years is when the Sikh Raj is destroyed and the British take over. And the 2 Anglo-Sikh wars take place within this time. Yeah, so 10 years to destroy what it took him from 1801 to build up. Yeah, what happens in this time? First war is in 1845 to 46. Yeah, and the second one is 1848 to 49. Obviously, the second one ends with the annexation. Okay, General Sham Singh Atariwala is one of the major peoples inside this. Yeah, you can read into the two wars. Within a war, you've got loads of battles. Yeah, battle here, battle there. One of the major battles was the Battle of Sabraun. Now, we here might not know much about it, but if you go into the British Army now and you walk, you will see the colours and these battles being commemorated, because units that are still around now would have fought in those battles, yeah? Because they note down their history, who fought where, what colours did they gain. They've got sarups of Maharaja from that time. They've got shastras that they captured from the battlefield, Sikh flags that they captured from that time. They are all floating around. I've seen some of this because I was in the army for 4 years. So I've seen, like, I've gone to a place and it's like Sabraun written up, you know, when they had like all the battles they fought. And there you see us, you know, or you know, like it's interesting to see so much of, you know, Sikh history is actually here as well. And it been, you know, the Anglo-Sikh Heritage Trail do a very good job of preserving some of these things, so you can look up that history of this time. The Battle of Sabraun was a very famous battle, so I mention it here. Basically, Lal Singh Dogra sold information about the Sikh defences, okay, and they didn't. Some of the even at some points, yeah, when people were asking for ammunition, they were sending the wrong things in, so they would send them like the wrong supplies, so they couldn't fight. And the Sikhs were betrayed from within. Most of the time, the battles were lost because of betrayals, okay, and information being leaked. And this is one time where a bridge was broken and 20,000 soldiers were captured, were basically trapped on an island, okay, which was surrounded by the British. The British were expecting them to give up, yeah, and capitulate. Not one of them surrendered, yeah, from this 20k. And you get a lot of people swimming away, and they say about 10,000 Sikhs died in that battle there. And Sham Singh Atariwala obviously died. His wife, when she heard about the battle, knew that her husband was dead, because he was not the kind of person to run away. Yeah, she knew he was dead, and she just lit the pyre for herself and she cremated herself. Yeah, so in 1849, then now who was the treachery? Where was the treachery mostly from? It was from the Dogras. Yeah, and Punjab gets annexed, okay, after these two wars. Yeah, so the Sikh kingdom is gone. The Kohinoor, which was a big fat diamond that Ranjit Singh had pretty much taken from the Afghan lords, yeah, who'd probably stolen it back from India anyway. That's taken away back to England, and it's cut up to increase the carat and the quality of it, and then now it's on the Queen. Yeah, she's got it on her crown, right? So just bear that in mind. It's not too far from here. You can go and see it at Tower of London, Tower Bridge. Yeah, you can go and see it there. I've been over there. Worthwhile to have a look what they nicked off us. A lot of Sikhs had tried to get this back, but then effectively, if we want it back, then the Afghans probably want it back, and then it goes back to the person who first had it. They want it back, and but they say whoever's had it has suffered misfortune. Yeah. Now, Duleep Singh, the little kid, he's taken to Britain, okay, under the protection of the crown. Got to believe what this is. Yeah, the protection. The crown is bringing him back. He's become taken over. He becomes the godson of Queen Victoria. Yeah, she takes him on and converts to Christianity, okay, and basically becomes like a lord, an English lord. Yeah, you know, if you see the photos of him, you'll be very surprised. He's like, it was totally anglicised, you know, hardly speak any Punjabi, whatever, and lived in a place in Thetford in Essex, yeah, and that place is still there, the house is still there, they kind of, you know, preserved that history as well. Later on, he meets his mother, okay, and he becomes a Singh again, and then basically goes back to Sikhi, and he's trying to recover his kingdom, but it's pretty much gone out of his hands by now. But he has his great dreams and ends up marrying a white lady. His daughters, I think one was called Bamba. There's a history of him. You can see he ends up dying in Paris, penniless. Yeah, but it's quite a tragic, you know, kind of story of him and what he suffered, you know, under British hands. This is the kind of, you know, this is quotes from around about that time the Punjab kingdom was annexed. Okay, 1849. Just to give you an idea of what the Sikhs felt about the British, because now we keep bleating on, and I might say bleating is the right word, about how great a history we have. We're such loyal soldiers, such loyal citizens. Just recently we've been talking about how loyal we are. But just go back to how our ancestors saw them when they first came in and tried to take over our kingdom, okay, after the wars. Governor General Lord Dalhousie says, the hatred of the Sikhs against the British exceeds the national and religious animosity of the Sikhs against the Afghans. We hate the British more than we hate the Afghans. Yeah? There is a shoot to kill policy on the Nihangs at that time by the British. You see a Nihang saying you can shoot him. Yeah? It's that bad. This is what they say. Colonel Steinbach in 1846 is saying this about the Nihangs. He goes, they are without exception the most insolent and worthless race of people under the sun. They move about constantly armed to the teeth, insulting everybody they meet, particularly the Europeans. They're quite uncontrollable, and the only way to deal with them is to exterminate them. Yeah? Basically, you can't govern them. That's what they're saying. You can't govern them. British are very keen to bring people under their fold, give them a sort of role, and give them a kind of mandate, and then govern them. And the Khalsa is not prepared to be governed, yeah, by these guys. Well, let's have a. What's the time now? I haven't got time. Okay, we'll have a 5-minute break, 5-10 minute break. Yeah, you can have a bit of pani, and then we're going to crack on with what happens in that kind of Sikhs being under the British, and what happens next.